Hello and welcome everybody. We are back for our second of four presentations in Write, Edit, Publish, and Market and Publish. And I'm so glad. Welcome, Alexa. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
You're super stressed because you've got this big Women in Publishing Summit coming up. So I'm going to plug it right here. I know it's a tough time.
It's fun. It's fun. Actually, yesterday, speaking of crazy stressful times, like our entire shopping cart platform that we use went down for like 6 hours. So yesterday was supposed to be the last day of the additional $50 off, but because of that, we've extended it. So you're in luck. If you're here today, you can still save an extra $50 with coupon code 50 off
Yeah.
WIP. Gosh, I don't remember. 23, I think it is.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, we will let everyone sign up and get involved in that. And I just want to welcome everyone. Let's look over here and see who all has arrived. Lots of people dropping in. Please drop your name and where you're from, what you're doing now, any work in progress. We'd love to share it. Everyone's here and everyone's happy. We have a lot of signups for this, so it's going very well, Alexa. And as we do that, everyone who is here, if you have to pop out quickly, that's okay. We do have a replay, and those of you joining us on the replay, welcome, welcome, because this is really great information about how editing and marketing and publishing can be planned strategically and simultaneously so that you can stay on your target and be a success. So let's just say hello to the people we have coming in here. We have, oh my goodness, let's see here. I've got everyone from Alberta, Canada, looking forward to Viva and Deborah, and we have Jim from Puerto Rico. Very nice. We have hello more Hattie from Birmingham. Very nice. St. Louis. Missed hearing from you in the second week. Hope you all got something from it. Okay. Palm Desert, California. Nice. Everyone. Albuquerque, Kingston, Ontario, Seattle, Ohio, St. Louis. Keep dropping your names and where you're from here. We'll just let those flow in as we go. And I'm going to introduce Alexa, who is with us here today. Let's see here. So, Alexa Big Wharf, let's see if I can get this going. Alexa Big Wharf is from Write, Publish, and Sell, and she's also the founder of the Women in Publishing Summit.com. So go over and check it out. About Alexa is a little bit over the last decade. Alexa's company, Write, Publish, Sell, has helped thousands of authors through their webinars, conferences, coaching, online community, and book marketing services. Her ever-expanding team now serves as experts in the publishing and book marketing world, and that's why we're combining with her today. It's very exciting. Alexa is passionate about advocating for authors, and she helps writers like you make well-informed decisions on steps needed to publish and market. So she's going to teach you how to find the right partners and the tools in your publishing journey while providing valuable tips to ensure that you actually market your book in the right way. And that's what we're talking about today, is strategically marketing. So Write, Publish, Sell offers paid courses, coaching, training, and a fantastic online community that I encourage everyone to join. Plus, they have tons of free resources to help you succeed as an author. So I'm Joellen Nordstrom. I'm from firstediting.com. Since 1994, we've helped over 50,000 authors with writing, editing, and publishing. I'm also a certified story coach and professional editor. So we're going to combine this today. Today, we're presenting Book Editing, Marketing, and Publishing, a 4-part series for authors and writers. And this is the second part of that, and it's called How to Strategically Edit, Publish, and Sell Your Manuscript. Are you ready, Alexa?
I am ready. Are you ready?
I am. We're going to do 15 minutes.
Ready.
15 minutes of intensive information and then a live Q&A. And so you can learn self-editing and then publishing with an agent, because that's what we're going to do. So let's start our 15 minutes of intense publication here. Let me just move my screen over so I can see what's happening. And I'm going to set up my banners here, and we're going to cover 4 things, everyone who joined us. So, let's get down here. We have how to strategically edit, publish, and market your manuscript. It's going to cover the top 4 publishing basics. And the first one is going to be, what to do step by step during the editing process. So we want to mention that publishing is planning. You publish with planning and purpose, but you always edit before you publish. So would you like to start on that topic, or should I just ask you a question directly?
Well, I mean, do you want to just cover what the editing process includes in that, or did you want to, okay, what are the publishing
Today I
steps?
really want to jump into the publishing. I
Okay.
mean, editing, we covered a little bit. It's the copywriting, the line editing, and all of that. And we can cover that more in the questions and answers. But the important
Okay.
part is, how do we combine these? And we can mention the different levels of editing as we go through that. But how do we combine this? So, what are the publishing steps that we're looking at during this process? And what is your outline as a publisher? Because I know you've mentioned this quite a bit, and I think you have something on your website there.
Yeah, so I mean, this obviously is going to depend on the type of publishing that you're doing. If you're self-publishing, obviously you're going to follow one route of steps. If you're publishing with a hybrid, if you're traditionally publishing, we covered this a little bit last time. Obviously, when you're getting your book edited, if you're going through the traditional process, it's with the goal of having a document that is good enough for an agent and a publisher to actually want your book enough to go on and move forward with it, and then it'll probably get edited again, but you want your best step forward. If you're self-publishing, well, if you're hybrid publishing, again, you're going to want an edit before you submit to the publisher, because you want it to be as good as possible. A lot of hybrid publishers prefer not to do developmental edits. Want to have a manuscript that's pretty clean, so that they're only doing copy edits or even proofreading at that point. And then self-publishing, of course, you're doing the whole shebang by yourself. So you're going to be doing all the other things that you need to be doing along the way. So this is when you start thinking about your marketing strategy. This is when you start lining up your formatter. This is when you start working with your cover designer, so that you can create your page on your website and have that cover design, so that once you're ready to start really marketing, you have a place to send people to, so that they can see what your book is about and get on your email list. You're going to start planning out what types of promo tours and your timeline from all of those things that you're going to do. So it's a very valuable time while your book is in the hands of the editor, and you have a little bit of free time to get out there and start building your launch team or the advanced reader teams, folks like that, gathering the information for the people that you're going to want to have as endorsers and participating in the actual launch of your book. So for me, I think the biggest thing at this point in time is to really dig down and start planning out the rest of what's going to happen, working on your back cover copy, working on your sales page cover copy, all of those types of things, so that you're really ready to move forward with getting it into the hands of your advanced readers once you get a pretty solid round of edits back.
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, everyone is, I do want to mention again that you mentioned to have it before you submit it to an agent, before you put it out there publicly, to have it edited. And the reason why is, as we sit here, there are millions of people sitting at computers worldwide, typing and writing a book. And only those who really treat the agents and the publishing house and the process with the respect that it really commands will be seen. Because if you show up with some typos and bad formatting, you don't follow the submission guidelines, they're just not going to look at it. So you need to make sure you're doing all that as we go through that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So our next section that we wanted to talk about is when to start according to your publisher's outline. I know you've got an outline there and you mentioned all these pieces, but there must be some sort of, how it all goes down for the newbies out there who are trying to figure it out. So we want to mention that book marketing happens during the editing process, and editing can happen simultaneously, as Alexa mentioned. So, ideally that's going to be your developmental edit should happen, a little bit earlier, but this is during your line edit, your revisions. And I know that, Alexa, you also just published a book recently, so you might want to share us a little bit of your insight there, because you've got double inside of how that works. You've helped others, but then you put yourself in the hot seat, so it's a little interesting. Talk us
Yeah.
through the timeline and your experience with editing and that.
I put myself in the naughty seat is what I did, because I didn't do any of the things that I would tell everybody else to do, because my timeline was crunched massively, um, So, it goes back to, again, your overall goals as a writer and what you're trying to do with your books. So I am not trying at this point in time to make my full income as an author. If that was my thing, if I had launched this book with the intent of, well, it is kind of the intent of starting a career as an author, but it's not a 1 year plan for me. This is like a 5 to 10 year plan to transitioning into an income, a full income. I still have my companies, my business, my publishing houses, and those are primary to me. So I kind of took the route that I would advise someone who can't come, who's doing this because they want to publish books, but not doing it because they're trying to make a full income as a writer, right? So I'm gonna not give you what I did timeline wise. Although there were some things that were really good, because what happened was, and here's where you are as a self-published author and you have the opportunity to make these adjustments in your timeline. Originally, I had scheduled a launch in August of 2022. And the reason I selected August was because I knew I was going to be in Paris and I wanted to do a big to-do. My book is set in Paris. I wanted to do a big to-do. Well, when I got back my developmental edits at the end of December of 2021, I knew there was no way on this green earth that I could pull off an August launch, because there was a lot of work to be done. I'm a first-time novelist. I've written lots of nonfiction books and things like that, but my first novel, and I got it back and I was like, there's just no way. With all the other things happening in my life, it wasn't going to happen. So I made the decision then, I would rather take my time and do it right and push off my launch until December and change things around. So that's what I did. And I'm really glad that I did that, because I needed that 6 months to finish editing the book, to run it through beta readers, to run it through another round of editing, copy edit. It went through multiple rounds of editing, revisions, and proofreading. And guess what? There were still mistakes, because that happens. And that's why you want more time, so that you're not rushed to publish a book that still has some few mistakes in it, hopefully. So, if you're self-publishing, and this is your first or even second book, and you're still working on your writing craft, you really, really need to give yourself a good amount of time for editing, because your editors throughout the different process, they're really going to help you finesse what you have so that it's the best version possible when you go out the door. Now, if you're working with a publisher, they're going to have a timeline for you, and you're really not going to have much of a say in that. You're going to do what you're told, basically, according to the publisher's timeline. However, doing that developmental edit ahead of time so that you have a really strong story, that'll be on your timeline. But it's really important that you are thinking big picture as you're doing it. What I see a lot of authors do is I see a lot of them go into tunnel vision. This is my writing time, this is my editing time, and nothing else exists. You just cannot do it that way. You just cannot, unless you are working towards crafting like a wonderful manuscript to send to an agent and have them take it over. But if you're going to be self-publishing or even hybrid publishing, you really have to be thinking long-term. And that's why we do things like this, so that you understand the steps that are going to come in there, so that you can start putting around it. What are you going to need in terms of your launch team, your launch efforts? How are you going to get in front of enough readers to make a big splash on launch day? And if there's nothing else I can tell you all, it is that marketing a book and launching a book and selling a lot of books is a bajillion times harder than writing the book in the first place, but it's fun. It's fun if you've got a plan. If you don't have a plan, it can be very, very, very frustrating and very, very costly, and all those types of things. Let's see. I think that was, what was your personal edit? Yes. So basically, I would say this is one of those areas that you don't want to skimp on time or money. You want to make sure that you are taking the time, that you're doing the revisions, and it can get really hard. And to be honest with you, when I got the revisions back from my developmental editor, I stepped away from the book for 2.5 months, like completely. Part of that was because I got it at the end of December. Those of y'all who know me know that I run the Women in Publishing Summit. So my January and February, there's no room for anything extra except for the conference.
Nope.
So I put it aside until after the conference. Then I came back to it. And actually, that was really good because my
Mm.
brain had time to process it and to think about the feedback that she'd given to me. And it wound up being much easier and less stressful at that point in time. But I saw someone ask about the beta readers, and beta readers,
Right.
it's going to depend on your genre.
Cool. Did I lose you?
Fiction. Did I get bounced out there? Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can
Am
hear
I
you.
here?
Yep, you're here.
Sorry. For fiction, your best beta readers are either authors who write in the same genre or readers, like voracious readers who are going to help you find holes in the story and those types of things. For nonfiction, you want to use somebody who's like going to be a consumer of the content because you want to make sure that it's answering the questions that they need. And you can find beta readers in writers groups. You can ask in groups like this, in communities like this, in groups like the Women in Publishing Summit. But it's a handful, not a lot of people, because you don't want it to be too overwhelming. But if you have a writing critique group, they're great beta readers to give you the feedback to help you finesse out the big issues so that you can spend less time and money in developmental editing.
Right. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot, and it's a lot to plan. And I love the fact that you're saying there's a bajillion things to do, because that's probably the most accurate description there is.
Yeah.
Building building your audience and having everything that you need. It's like you're talking about this big party. Well, it is a big party. You're inviting everyone in, and then you have a website to meet them. You need to set up some kind of communication and all this stuff. And the more you have, the more desirable you are to a traditional publisher or a hybrid publishing or whatever. So it's really helpful in that way. Let's see here. I'll get back to my banners.
Linda, I just want to say that's such a great idea. People who critique you and give really great constructive criticism on your previous books, that's a great beta reader, because you already know the type of feedback and that they know the genre, and I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good thing. I know that you run a community online, and it's really ideal to meet other editor or other authors in that same genre, because they can also recommend each other as you get in there. So it's good to have to get started. So I know that we promised we were going to talk about why it's important to have steps when we're doing the publishing and the editing together. So we will cover that now. So how does marketing fit into this? Oh, sorry. How does marketing fit into the timeline? Do we have that exactly? I mean, I know you mentioned everything you have to do, but do you have an actual step-by-step process?
We do have an actual step-by-step process, and it's something that we do with our one-on-one clients, and it's something that we do with the books that we publish. And it's a process that we have developed and refined over the last decade to get all the things in place, and to be very honest and open and clear about this. It's not easy, and it's not something you can do without some type of investment, because really we start our marketing almost a year out from launch, if not longer. Sometimes 6 months can do it. But if you're with Purple Butterfly Press, for example, our children's book company, like, we are really, really, really trying to make sure they have solid launches and are very well placed in front of the right audiences, because it's critical that we sell enough books and create enough buzz in the beginning to keep that book continuing to sell. So there's all kinds of things that you have to have and know, and even know. And this is why it's so important that you educate yourself, that you go to training, that you do things, because you wouldn't know otherwise that you need to be submitting a final manuscript or even a printed version of the book 4 to 6 months in advance to some key review places, to some trade review, to some, if you want your book to show up in like the Washington Post or something like that. Like, there's a lot of ways to get trade and editorial reviews far in advance, but they have their timelines on when they want it. So if your book isn't ready and you don't miss their school library journal is another one of them. Even like the trade reviews like Kirkus and Clarion and all of those, generally you can still get reviews from them after launch, but it's going to benefit you much more in the window ahead of time. and for a lot of reasons, which we don't really have time to get into today, but just know that it does. And that you're going to want to have your manuscript ready ahead of time. So if you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to finish writing my book on December 1st, I'm going to send it through editing, fingers crossed, that'll take no more than 2 months. I'll have it formatted, and then I'm going to launch it on April 1st. You really haven't given yourself enough time to do the key marketing, which is key marketing with a manuscript, like not just going out on social media and talking about your book, but actually getting it into the hands of readers so that they can read it and have the time to go leave reviews and create that forward momentum prior to the launch. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, depending on what's important to you for your launch, if it's trade reviews, if it's having a large presence on social media, having a lot of bloggers, having a lot of reviews in local journals and newspapers and all of those things, like there's a timeline in place, and there's things that you have to have done by a certain amount of time. If you're trying to do podcasts, knowing that podcasts book up for months in advance, so making sure that you're scheduled out so that your podcast episode will launch around your launch time. All of those types of things that you can't just do them last minute and say, okay, the book is out there, I'm going to go talk about it. Because what we see happening now, I'm sure everybody could give me an example of somebody who had a miracle launch that didn't do any of these things and still sold lots of books. It happens. There are unicorns that exist in this world. But for the most part, the people who are selling consistent books did a lot of work in the 6 to 12 months prior to their launch. And that's why when we run our book launch in a box program each year, we position it for people who are launching 6 to 12 months from the time that they start the program with us, because we go through all of those steps that should be done 6 to 12 months prior to your launch, so that you're set up for success on all of your social media, website, your trade reviews, your all of those types of things. An example of a timeline from a manuscript to publisher, we say a minimum of 120 days from the time your book has gone into editing, minimum, to get all of the things done. But I'm here to tell you, I prefer, unless you're doing rapid launches where you have a series where you're going to launch one, then the other, and those are going to build on each other. I prefer that you give yourself a solid a year in total process from the time you finish the book to getting it through editing, to going through everything. And if you can go over to writepublishsell.com and scroll down a little bit, and we have a book launch checklist. It's the key steps and a suggested timeline, but that's built off of the 120-day window, not because I think that that's the best timeline, but because that's what most self-published authors are really aiming for, is a 4 to 6 month window. But I say in there several times, 120 plus days, 120 days to a year, 100, So
I think it's one of those times when you can actually say, tranquilo, take it a little bit slower here. Let's not rush this. You've done really well. So, and you've done so much work, and there's so much more work to be done that there's no point. There's no point.
The longer I'm in the industry, the more I really understand why the timeline of a traditionally published book is so long. And, you're looking often from the acquisition to public publishing is in the 2, sometimes 3-year period. And it is because of the simple fact that it costs a lot of money to produce a book, whether you're doing it on your own or whether you're going through, or whether a publisher is doing it for you. If the proper steps have been taken, there's no way you get out of this without spending at least $5,000. No way, if you're doing it properly. And by that, I mean fantastic editing, fantastic cover, fantastic interior, and a low level of marketing. That's going to get you to where a baseline of what you need, right? Can you do it for cheaper? Yes, you can. But I've stopped telling people to skimp out and take the low, because it doesn't do you any good. It doesn't do you any service. And the reality is, if you're going to sell a book, if you're going to produce a product that is going to be sold, that you need to treat yourself like a business person and do the things that a business would do. A coffee shop is not going to open its doors without coffee cups, without coffee, without marketing, without a cash register, without a trained employee to run the cash register, without food to sell.
Yeah.
without napkins. So an author should not publish a book that's not edited, not marketed, not done all the things that you need to do to sell that book as well. So
Absolutely.
anyway, that's a whole different thing. I don't want to go on too much there. I just want you to consider, yes, there are ways. You don't have to buy the Mercedes, right? You can
No.
find other less expensive, you can find great quality people to work with. First Editing's prices are
Mm.
very industry competitive, and they're always offering coupons to save you even more money. And it's quality product, right? So
Yes.
invest in the quality that you need, so that you have a product that people want to buy afterwards. I
Right.
went way off track there, but the key thing is that why it's important to this is because if you say right now I'm only going to work on my writing, and you've wasted all of that time, that you're not building some kind of presence, that you're not getting in front of readers somehow, that you're not looking at what events you can book and how you can do those types of things. And you don't have to go to Europe, Hattie. You can do events in your local town. You can go to
Yes.
farmers markets. You can go to Christmas fairs. You can go to Crawdad Festival, all those types of
Mm.
things. But you have to be thinking about those things, because you cannot just come up with them at the last minute. Trust me,
No.
I tried it on myself. It doesn't work. And that's why I was sitting here thinking, well, now I know exactly why I tell people to do it this way, because I've tried to shortcut it and I had a
Yep.
decent launch, but it's not nearly what it could have been if I had followed all the steps that I would tell you to follow. So
Do as I say, not as I do. Yeah,
right. In
exactly.
that case, right. Do as I tell my authors to do.
Well, the fourth part we wanted to talk today was about how you can prepare for marketing publishing during the editing process. And we kind of covered that all in the timeline. So what can you do? We've mentioned all that, and it's really about not getting tunnel vision, about it takes time. It really is a plant and harvest kind of
Yes,
situation. You have to take the time, and that's seasonal. It takes time. You can't rush people getting to know you. You can't rush building up the trust. You can't rush eventually building up the email list, and having reviews and having people to feedback. If you're doing beta readers, that takes time, to even trust your editor, to understand what they're saying and why they're advising you to do something, which is always an interesting situation, because sometimes you don't want to and you don't have to, but there are, to at least understand the reasoning behind the suggestions that's being made, and understanding that if you go to a traditional agent, an agent in the publishing house, they're going to have their own in-house editor who's going to go through and they're going to edit it again, and that's okay, because they're doing it towards your audience. And if you haven't built that audience, then they have to make sure that it really sings to the people that they're going to put it in front of. So
yeah,
again, there's a lot of things to do there, but take your time, do the process. I would never hesitate to do it again, again, again. Well, it was years ago. It feels like another world, before COVID, when I was in New York at the book expo, and I met Malcolm Gladwell, who is one of my favorite authors. And I asked him, as an editor, to share with my authors, you know, what what do you think about this? And he says, you just keep rewriting and rewriting
yes,
and rewriting,
yes.
and you just keep editing and editing and editing, because it's never done. And this is from a guy who can publish anything, because he has the trust, he has the list, the people, the followers, whatever. But still, the moment you let quality slide, it's not gonna achieve what you want.
That's
And
very true.
the good part is that if you do it right, then everyone who joins you on that first journey will gladly follow along in the second, third, fourth. And, many publishers nowadays are asking, they will only take on series. You have to have 3 or 4 ready.
Yes.
And they have to be ready when you're starting that first publishing, because, you'll say, oh, but I can write the next one. No, 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 no. They're very familiar with authors and the promises that are made. And the good thing is, the way Amazon is made is you get to the end and it says, okay, do you want to buy the next book? And
Mhm,
that's the
mhm.
ideal time. If they're loving what you wrote, bam, yes, I want to
Yes,
buy the next 3, whatever it is. So
that
binge,
is
binge,
real
binge.
True. And to your point, like during this process, like the most important thing that people can really consider as they're going through it is how to get in front of readers. If you don't know what else to do when you're thinking about your marketing, think about how am I going to find and get in front of readers, and taking the action steps to do those things is going to help you. And I wanted to address Paula's comment here. And
Mhm.
Paula, this is 100%. In fact, in my publishing house, she said she doesn't want to set her launch date until she knows the book is done, because she's seen other people have to move and that's yes, yes, and yes, and yes. And in fact, in my publishing houses, we will talk about a nice timeline. Like if all things go well, we'd like to publish this book. But again, we work on a 12 to 18 month publishing window. So even if we're like, okay, we think spring of 2024 is going to work, that's okay to kind of put a pinpoint in there, but we don't actually set a publishing date until the book is basically in its advanced reader version. Like once it's gone through editing on the illustration side, once illustrations are complete, and to make sure, but definitely on a fiction and nonfiction book, I will not even address a launch date until the book has gone through developmental and copy and line editing, because that piece of the process can throw the timeline. It's the only thing that throws the timeline, really.
Yeah.
Like nothing else can everything else can be done in a fairly quick manner. If we mess up the interior, that can be redone in like a day or two. But the editing, to my point, where it took me almost 4 months after I got back my edits, like you just never know how long it's going to take.
No, you don't. You don't. Here, let's see here. We have a request. Can you give an example of a timeline from, say, manuscript to publisher to publish to etc.? I think that's dependent, but you go ahead and answer that.
It is going to be dependent. Most if with small houses and traditional houses, that window is going to range from them receiving the manuscript and it from all the way to publication date, could be anywhere from 12 to 36 months, really. So it just depends on the size of the house that you're with. It depends on all kinds of things. Now, some may move faster than that. It would be rare, I think. Some hybrid presses move a little bit faster than that because a lot of times authors come in with books that have already been professionally edited, and it's just a matter of doing the marketing and getting the formatting done and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very, very dependent on the type of publisher, how many books they have in the works, if they've already scheduled out. Like for Purple Butterfly Press, like we are already scheduling into 2024. So if somebody were to come to me with a manuscript today, like the earliest we would schedule it is summer of 2024 because of our other backlogs
Yeah.
of books. So there's no one answer to that. It's just going to be how, dependent.
Okay. Start your first book. I believe you answered that one. I'm just scrolling up here.
Oh, Sherry, I'm here to tell you right now, if you don't want to sell any of your first, second, or third books, don't start marketing them now. If you want to sell your first, second, and third books, you need to be marketing that first book before it comes out. So the mixed message on this is, again, going back to how much time, energy, and effort have you put into it? Because some authors take the philosophy of, I just want to get started publishing books. I want to start building up my whatever, my world, and all this kind of
Library.
stuff. And
Yeah.
so they um, write faster. They know it's not like, they know they're still working on their craft as they do book 2, book 3, book 4, book 5, whatever. If that's the case, if you're like, I'm writing, I know that this isn't, I'm writing, I'm putting these books out there. If that's your philosophy, then maybe that's true and you're just kind of building up and getting there. But if you're really, really trying to create a solid career, then one, I would make sure that your book is done as well as possible from the time you go out the gate, and two, that you do put some level of effort into marketing. Now, you don't have to like break the bank on the first book. If you have a series of books mapped out, that in itself is a marketing strategy, right? So there are some people who will say, I'm going to launch my first book. I'm going to launch the second book, knowing that it's going to send people back to the first book. Then when I hit book 3, that's when I'm going to put the pedal to the metal. And I'm really going to move forward on heavy marketing there, because I know I'm going to get backlist orders of book 1 and 2 if they like book 3. So yes, there can be some of that done. But what we see is some people and I won't name any names, but I've worked with authors who are working on series, myself included on this one, who had the intention of doing something like that. And then life got so busy, and I thought I'd be publishing my second book in the series sometime around April. And I'm not even going to get into finishing the book until April. So it's going to be almost a year between publications of my book. So that would not be a good strategy for that when they're so long between the books. But if you're
Right.
doing them quickly, then you could perhaps not do quite as much marketing on the first book, but you're still going to want to set yourself up for as much success as possible, in my opinion.
Exactly. Exactly. Any other questions here, folks? Please throw them in because we're going to keep this short and sweet. I know, Alexa, you've got all kinds of things to fix, and we got
Oh, the
stuff.
crisis is averted now. I'm chatting. I'm
You're just,
good. I'm all
oh,
right for a few more minutes.
it helps. You
This
calm
is
down,
this is
right?
helping me calm down. If you might have noticed when we first started, I was like, now I'm calming down. So this is good. I'm with my people. I enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, I was just throwing this one up. They picked how she picked her beta readers, which is quite interesting to choose the ones who didn't give you 5 stars, not the yeah people, but the more I liked it, but I really longed for, or needed this, or lacked this. I think
Right.
that's kind of interesting to get that feedback.
I
And
think it's
again,
good.
if you're when you're doing this, of course, if you have any questions at the beginning, that's the ideal time to go into developmental editing. And there's a new system out with story coaching, which is basically looking at your story arc and looking at every scene and using a process which allows you to evaluate and build up your book in such a way. And you can either do it yourself, or you can have a certified story coach help you through it. And it's very helpful. And then once you're done, get a different editor to go ahead and do your line editing and your copy editing so that you can, go on to formatting confidently. And then after you've done your copy edit to formatting, I always, please, people, please always do the proofread. Have somebody proofread your final manuscript, because when you upload these documents and you put them into these wonderful, magical platforms, sometimes they eat them and they do
Yes.
horrible things. and and they just spit them back out, and you think, oh, I'm ready to go, and you can lose a whole page. You read along and then it's just gone, just disappeared, bye bye.
Mhm.
And so it's very important to have that final proofread, that final. And I advise, have somebody else do it, and then I advise you to sit down and read your own book one more time, not to revise, not to make changes, but just to, you're the one who knows everything that should be there.
Mhm.
So it should go very quickly. And you want to make sure that those, if you have images, if you have your page breaks, your scene breaks, all of that it displays the right way, because it really is important. And then of course making sure that, you know, if when you're submitting it, you're following the guidelines of whoever you're submitting it to. Always,
And
always,
Joelle, and you're
always.
not exaggerating. Like that's a very realistic situation. We've had at least 3 books where when we
Yeah.
got a printed copy of it, realized that there was a weird page where there'd been a map embedded, and for some reason it covered
Yeah.
like all the text. It didn't look like that on the PDF, but that's the way it printed. We had one that like half a chapter was just gone. Nobody can figure out why. We've had
Nope.
like there is stuff like this all the time. So that's another thing, like especially if you are moving on a faster timeline. And listen, I need to go back and kind of tell you something that I did too.
Hmm.
And that is that sometimes I actually like push books to market because there's a reason to get them there, and we don't do all the things. For example, with my first book, Sunshine After the Storm, a survival guide for the grieving mother, we weren't trying to market that. We weren't trying to build that up. I wanted that book published so that I could print copies and give it to mothers. So there are times where you don't have to listen to any of this timeline or marketing stuff.
Right.
There are things that you just
Passion
need.
projects.
Exactly. Passion projects, or even like if you're a keynote speaker, you've been working on a book, you've got an event coming up in May, it's March, it's February. You
Yeah.
can go ahead and maybe not do all the marketing and the build up and all that kind of stuff, because it's more important to you to have printed copies of that book when you go to a speaking event. So there are all kinds of situations why you might do that differently. But no matter what your timeline, no matter how compressed it is or how long it is, do add to your checklist: order printed proof,
Yes.
read printed proof,
Yes.
because Just there was another really wild thing that happened one time that for some reason, a particular font that we were using for our books, whatever printer that KDP uses, this wasn't a problem going through Ingram Spark, but KDP, for some reason, anytime the words were in italics and it had a D, it dropped the stem of the D and filled in a hole. It filled in the circle. So every time there was a D in italics, which this one had a lot of journal entries, so it was a lot, it was
Oh
just a
no.
circle in
Yeah.
there. And if we hadn't seen a print proof, we would have never known that to be the case. So we had to completely change the font, which
Hmm.
was a pain. But better that that happened 3 months before launch than get a bunch of returns because there's filled in circles all throughout the book instead of D's.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just really strange, and it's another thing. It's like there's certain rules that I have, and of course, getting a printed proof is top after, and going through and reading it because the proofreader should have done their job, and you need to do your job. But also, as an editor, I always say never accept all because editors go through and they make all these changes and track changes, and you're getting tired, you're getting to the deadline, you just want it done, you love your editor, you trust them, you think they're great, and you just say, accept all. Never, ever do that because you know, you're dealing with a human.
Yeah.
and,
Yes.
and you need to, it may be right, the change that you have accepted, but it may not be what you intended to say. It
Right.
may have a whole different result.
Right.
And it's the same way that, all of these AI intelligent assistants and these softwares that are going on right now, which is all the talk, they are right. They are absolutely right. But do they feel right?
Right.
Is it fluent? Is it English? Is it human? So
Right.
never
Right.
ever accept all. I think we're a long ways off from that. I think there's great tools out there to use, but always you ultimately, it's your baby, it's your reputation on the line, and all the money you've spent. If you don't do that simple step, you can lose it.
Yeah.
It was all for nothing.
Yes.
It's so sad, so sad.
It
Well,
is
that's great.
terribly sad. We don't want to have that. That's why we're having this conversation so that we don't get into that.
Exactly. All right, let's see here. I'm just going to look and see if we've got any other questions. If not, I'm going to tell everyone to come and join us on the next session, which will be next month. And I want to encourage everyone to go over to the Women in Publishing Summit, and you can get an extra $50 off because things crash there. Okay,
Speaking
let's
of
see here.
crazy things happening, they happen sometimes. Yes, if you go to womeninpublishingsummit.com, you can use the coupon code 50OFFWIP23. That's 50 off WIP23. That code will end today, although I should probably leave it open till tomorrow because apparently I told everybody February 17th and it was supposed to be the 15th. Y'all, I am horrible with dates.
Yeah,
Horrible.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, so let's see here.
And then we'll be back here. What day do we come back for our next segment of this?
Oh, I don't have it lit. It's here. Hang on, maybe it's on my screen here. Let's see. I have us down for session 3 is going to be the 22nd of March. So, and it's going to be how to start marketing and publishing while revising your book. So again, a little bit more specifics there on the different tasks that you
Yes.
can do, the different tasks you should outsource, where you need to get help, how to get that help, what to ask for, those kind of things, and how that fits in with the editing and any other questions. Of course, any editing questions you're always welcome to ask me, but I really want to talk about the publishing when I have Alexa here because that's the ultimate goal. Everybody wants to publish. Nobody wants to edit. They know they have to edit, and that's okay. Everybody wants to wear a bikini, but you have to do the workout. So sorry, that's just the way it is.
Well, I am excited to see everybody who joins us on March 1st. We're going to have 4 really, really good days. Joellen and First Editing are sponsors of the conference as well, and they've got a nice 20% off coupon code for our attendees,
Right.
which is great.
That's right.
It's going to be a good time. And then we'll come back together after I have a little bit of a break in March, and we'll dig into specific things that you can do to market your book while you're in the editing and publishing process.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. I think we've got all of our questions here. And I just want to thank everyone for coming today. It's really great. We had a lot of people sign up. We will be sending out the replay. We will have the third one. You can sign up on Eventbrite. Follow us on YouTube, subscribe, and you'll get more of these great programs as we go through them. And Alexa, as always, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your time. Thanks
Oh, I
for giving
enjoy
all
it.
this information.
I
All
enjoy
right.
it. All right.
Oh, it is fun. All right, we'll see
Thank
you again in
you.
March, and I'll see you at the summit.
All right. Sounds good. All right.
Take
Bye,
care. Bye
everyone.
bye.